The stairs creaked beneath my weight as I climbed, each step louder than the last. I hated how dramatic it felt, like the house itself was announcing my fear. I told myself to slow down, to breathe normally, but my chest refused to cooperate. The air upstairs felt cooler, heavier, carrying the faint smell of dust and old wood, and nothing looked disturbed. The hallway stretched out in front of me, doors closed, shadows pulled along the edges where the light didn't quite reach. My bedroom door was half open, exactly how I'd left it. The guest room, Ethan's room, was closed. I stood there, listening, silence. I almost laughed at myself. You're letting your imagination run wild, I thought. That was easier than admitting the truth. I had been waiting for something to happen. For weeks now, maybe longer. Waiting for a crack in the routine big enough for the truth to slip through. I turned back downstairs, annoyed at my own nerves. The house settled again, a faint groan echoing through the walls. I tried to focus on small, familiar things, the framed photos along the staircase, the chipped paint near the banister, the way the rain streaked the windows in uneven lines. This house had always been my anchor. It was where nothing unexpected ever happened, except lately, everything felt unexpected. By noon, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. I sat at the dining table with my laptop open, pretending to work, though my eyes kept drifting to the clock. Still no word from Ethan. I typed his name into my messages, erased it, typed it again. You coming today? I stared at the words for a long time before hitting send. The three dots never appeared. That was when the unease truly set in. Ethan was many things, reckless, charming, frustratingly observant, but unreliable wasn't one of them. If he was late, he called. If plans changed, he explained. The silence felt deliberate, and that scared me more than any strange noise ever could. I pushed my chair back and stood, pacing the room. You're not his keeper, I reminded myself. You don't get to demand answers, but that logic didn't quiet the tight knot in my stomach. By mid-afternoon, the sky darkened again, clouds rolling in low and heavy. The house seemed dimmer, even with all the lights on. I moved from room to room, straightening things that didn't need straightening, filling the quiet with motion. Every so often, I caught myself listening, really listening, for something out of place. A knock sharp. Sudden. I froze for a second. I couldn't move at all. My heart slammed against my ribs as I stared at the front door. The knock came again, louder this time, impatient. I didn't need to ask who it was. When I opened the door, Ethan stood there, rain-soaked and breathless, his dark hair plastered to his forehead. His jacket hung open, water dripping onto the porch. He looked shaken. Not panicked, exactly, but off balance in a way I'd never seen before. You're late, I said, immediately regretting how accusing it sounded. His eyes flicked up to meet mine, then away again. I know. That was it. No joke. No excuse. I stepped aside to let him in, the tension between us thick enough to taste. He brushed past me, close enough that I caught the scent of rain and something sharper, anxiety, maybe. He didn't take off his shoes. Didn't look around. He just stood in the middle of the living room like he didn't know where to put himself. Ethan. I tried again. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing once, twice. I almost didn't come. The words landed hard. My throat tightened. Why? He stopped pacing and looked at me, then really looked at me. His expression was guarded, eyes dark with something I couldn't quite read. Fear. Resolve. Both. Because if I came, he said slowly, I knew I couldn't pretend anymore. The room felt suddenly smaller. I laughed softly, a reflex more than a reaction. Pretend about what? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked to the window, staring out at the rain like it held the answers he couldn't give me. The silence stretched, uncomfortable and electric. I saw him, he said finally. My stomach dropped. Saw who? He exhaled sharply. Your brother. The mention of him sent a jolt through me. My brother was the one person I never talked about when Ethan was around. Too many complications. Too much history. When I asked this morning, Ethan said. At the cafe near my place. I crossed my arms, bracing myself. And he knows, Ethan said. The words echoed in my head. He knows what? The truth I hadn't said out loud? The tension that lived between us, unspoken but obvious? Or something worse, something that could unravel everything? You're being vague, I said, though my voice shook. Ethan turned back to me, his jaw clenched. He asked me questions. About you. About us. There is no us, I said automatically. He flinched. The reaction was small, but it was there. It twisted something sharp and painful in my chest. That's not what he thinks, Ethan said quietly. I looked away, unable to meet his gaze. My thoughts raced, images of whispered conversations and knowing looks flashing through my mind. This town loved rumors. Loved secrets even more. What did you say to him? I asked. Ethan hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. A pulse of anger surged through me, hot and sudden. You had no right, I snapped. You don't get to decide when, if, any of this becomes public. I didn't decide anything, he shot back. He cornered me. And I'm tired of lying. The word lying hung between us. I swallowed hard. So what now? Ethan stepped closer, closing the distance I'd subconsciously tried to maintain. I could see the conflict written across his face, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands curled into fists and then relaxed again. Now, he said, I need to know if I'm doing this alone. My heart hammered. This? I repeated. He held my gaze, unblinking. Whatever this is. Whatever we've been circling around for years. The rain intensified outside, drumming against the windows like a warning. I wanted to say no. Wanted to laugh it off, to push him away and retreat into the safety of routine. That would have been easier. Safer, but when I opened my mouth, no sound came out because the truth was already there, lodged in my chest, aching to be acknowledged. Ethan took my silence as an answer, or at least, as permission. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his phone, hesitating for just a second before holding it out to me. There's something else, he said. Something you should see. I stared at the screen, my pulse roaring in my ears. Ethan, I whispered, what did you do? He didn't answer. He just waited, eyes fixed on my face, as if bracing himself for whatever would come next. And as I took the phone from his hand, a single thought cut through the noise in my head, sharp and undeniable. This is the moment everything changes. The rain had begun as a soft patter, tapping rhythmically against the window pane, a sound that usually calmed me. But tonight, it felt intrusive, almost accusatory, echoing through the empty apartment like a reminder of everything I hadn't said, and everything I shouldn't have thought. I sat on the edge of the bed, my fingers tracing the worn fabric of the comforter, trying to will my racing heart to slow. Jamie wasn't home. He should have been. He always was, punctual in his habits, meticulous about dinner, the TV remote, the way he left his shoes neatly by the door. But now, the apartment was unnervingly still. Even the hum of the refrigerator sounded louder, stranger, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I kept glancing at the door, half expecting it to open, half hoping it wouldn't. Jamie's absence was unusual, but more than that, it carried a weight I couldn't name, a tension that made my stomach twist and my hands tremble. Memories of our childhood flickered unbidden, whispered jokes in the dark, moments of accidental closeness, laughter that sometimes felt too charged, too intimate. I had buried those thoughts, convincing myself they were nothing, yet tonight they surfaced with a stubborn persistence. A sudden creak in the hallway made me freeze, every nerve in my body taut. My pulse quickened. Was it him? Or someone else? My hand drifted toward the small note lying on the kitchen counter, folded neatly in his unmistakable handwriting. I hadn't noticed it before. Meet me tonight. Don't tell anyone. The words were simple, almost innocent, but they throbbed with a strange urgency. I swallowed hard, feeling a mix of curiosity and fear knotting in my chest. Could I go? Should I? Part of me wanted to call it off, retreat into safety, pretend the note had never existed. But another part, one I didn't fully understand, was drawn forward, pulled by a tension that had been building for years, subtle and unacknowledged. Between us the apartment felt colder now, shadows pooling in the corners like silent watchers. The rain intensified outside, a relentless drum against the glass. And somewhere deep inside, I knew that the choice I was about to make could change everything. I ran a hand through my hair, heart hammering, mind spinning with questions I didn't have answers to. Had he really been joking all those years ago? Or had there always been something unsaid, something forbidden, waiting to be discovered? The thought sent a shiver down my spine, both terrifying and exhilarating. I rose from the bed, slipping on my jacket, every movement hesitant, as if I were walking toward the edge of a precipice. Outside, the storm continued, each drop of rain a reminder of the night's potential, a night that promised revelations, danger, and a crossing of boundaries I had never imagined. And as I opened the door, stepping into the shadowed hallway, I couldn't shake the feeling that nothing would ever be the same again. This introduction sets a calm yet tense atmosphere with rain, shadows, an empty apartment, introduces the narrator and Jamie, hinting at their complicated past, includes inner monologue. Reflecting curiosity, fear, and unresolved tension, ends with foreshadowing of a forbidden, dramatic night to come. I can now continue with the rising action, 1,200 to 1,500 words, escalating tension, introducing the main conflict, and deepening the character's relationship. Do you want me to continue with that next? The power went out just before dawn, not completely, just enough to leave the house in that uneasy half-light where shadows stretch longer than they should. I lay still in bed, listening to the rain tap against the window in an irregular rhythm, my breath shallow as if the dark itself might hear me. The ceiling fan slowed, groaned once, then stopped. Silence rushed in to fill the space it left behind. I told myself it was nothing. This house had always been temperamental. Old wiring. Older walls. It liked to remind you that it had a history. Still, I reached for my phone on the nightstand, the glow of the screen cutting through the dim room like a confession. No new messages. No missed calls. He should have been here by now. Ethan never slept in. He said mornings made him honest. Less guarded. I used to tease him about it, but secretly I liked knowing he'd be awake before me, moving quietly through the kitchen, pretending not to watch me when I came downstairs, pretending that word had become too familiar. I sat up slowly, the sheets cool against my skin, and listened. The house was awake, wood popping softly, pipes sighing, but there was no movement from the guest room. No footsteps. No clatter of mugs. A strange unease settled in my chest, heavy and insistent. Don't assume, I warned myself. Assumptions led to questions. Questions led to truths I wasn't ready to face. Downstairs, the air smelled faintly of rain and stale coffee. I flipped the light switch out of habit, then frowned when nothing happened. Grey morning light filtered in through the windows, painting everything in muted tones. The house looked unfamiliar like this, stripped of its usual warmth. Ethan. I called. My voice sounded too loud. No answer. I stood there longer than necessary, staring at the empty doorway to the hall. A memory surfaced uninvited, Ethan leaning against that frame just days ago, too close, his voice low as he said my name like it meant more than it should. I'd laughed it off. Changed the subject. Chosen safety. My phone buzzed suddenly in my hand. I flinched. 1 notification, not from him, from my brother. You awake? My stomach tightened. He never texted this early. Not unless something was wrong. Or unless something had finally been decided without me. I didn't reply. Instead, I noticed something else, something small but unmistakable. Ethan's jacket was gone from the chair where he always left it. His shoes weren't by the door. The space he occupied so effortlessly had been erased, leaving behind only the echo of his presence. Had he left quietly, or had he been forced to? A sound drifted down from upstairs then. Soft. Deliberate. A door closing. My pulse spiked. I stared at the staircase, my thoughts scattering. Ethan couldn't be there. I would have heard him. Wouldn't I? You're imagining things, I told myself, but my feet moved anyway, drawn forward by a mixture of fear and something dangerously close to hope. Each step creaked under my weight, the sound too loud in the hush. Halfway up, my phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from an unknown number. We need to talk. He didn't tell you everything. My breath caught. At the top of the stairs, the hallway waited, still, dim, full of doors that suddenly felt like choices I could never unmake. My heart pounded as one thought cut through the noise, sharp and undeniable. Whatever happens next, there's no going back. And as I reached for the nearest door, I realized the scariest part wasn't what I might find, it was what I already knew. The phone felt heavier than it should have in my hand. I stared at the dark screen, waiting for it to light up, as if it might refuse to show me whatever truth Ethan had trapped inside it. My thumb hovered, trembling. I could hear my own heartbeat, loud, uneven, drowning out the rain, the house, everything. Just watch, Ethan said quietly. There was no urgency in his voice. No pressure. And somehow, that made it worse. I unlocked the phone. The video began without sound. The image was grainy, filmed from across a street, but the figures were unmistakable. My brother stood outside the cafe, his posture stiff, his hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets. Across from him, Ethan. Closer than they should have been. Close enough that the space between them felt charged, even through the screen. I watched as my brother leaned in, his mouth moving rapidly. I couldn't hear the words, but I recognized the gestures. The sharp tilt of his head. The way his shoulders squared when he thought he had the upper hand. Then Ethan spoke. He didn't move away. He didn't laugh it off. He stood his ground. The video ended abruptly. My throat burned. You recorded this? Ethan nodded once. I didn't plan to. I just had a feeling. Like I might need proof. Or maybe courage. I handed the phone back, my fingers numb. He knows, I said again, though now the words carried weight. Finality, yes. And? Ethan's jaw tightened. And he told me to stay away from you. The room tilted slightly, like I'd missed a step on the stairs. Because he thinks, he doesn't think, Ethan interrupted gently. He's sure. A bitter laugh escaped me. Of course he is. I turned away, pacing. My thoughts spiraled, colliding into each other. Anger at my brother. Fear of what he could do with the truth. Shame that I hated myself for still caring what he thought. He said you were confused, Ethan continued. That I was taking advantage of something you didn't understand yet. That did it. I spun back around. That's ridiculous. I know, Ethan said quickly. I told him that. You told him. My voice cracked. Ethan stepped closer, hands raised slightly, like he was approaching something fragile. I told him you weren't confused. That you knew exactly who you were. My chest tightened painfully. You don't get to define me, I said, though the protest sounded weak even to my own ears. I wasn't trying to, Ethan replied. I was defending you. The word defending echoed in my head for years. I had done everything alone, hidden, careful, quiet. I had learned how to disappear into myself, how to make everyone else comfortable at my own expense. The idea that someone else had stood up, had spoken aloud the truth I barely dared to think, left me raw and exposed. You shouldn't have, I whispered. Ethan's eyes softened. I couldn't help it. The silence stretched between us, thick and electric. I could feel the gravity pulling us closer, even as fear screamed at me to step back. What else did he say? I asked. Ethan hesitated. That hesitation was a blade. He said if I didn't back off, Ethan said slowly, he'd make sure you were forced to deal with this. Publicly. My breath caught. He threatened you. He threatened us, Ethan corrected. The rain outside intensified, hammering against the roof like applause for a disaster I hadn't agreed to star in. I sank onto the edge of the couch, my legs suddenly weak. I can't do this, I said. I'm not ready. Ethan crouched in front of me, his voice steady but urgent. I know. And I'm not asking you to come out. I'm asking you to stop pretending this doesn't matter. I looked at him then, really looked at him. At the worry etched into his face. At the restraint in his posture, the way he stayed just far enough away to give me space. You could lose everything, I said. Your job. Your friends. Your family. So could you, he replied. And yet here we are. I closed my eyes. Images flooded my mind, family dinners filled with careful smiles, casual jokes that cut too close, the constant performance of being someone easier to accept. I thought about the cost of continuing that performance. About the quiet loneliness of it. When I opened my eyes, Ethan was still there. Still waiting. Say something, he murmured. I'm scared, I admitted. So am I. The honesty in his voice unraveled me. I stood suddenly, unable to stay still any longer. What if he's right? I asked, the question tearing out of me before I could stop it. What if I am just reacting? What if this is a phase, or a mistake, or Ethan rose too, his movements careful? Don't do that. Do what? Let other people tell you who you are, he said. His voice dropped. I've watched you wrestle with this for years. I've watched you light up and then shut yourself down. That's not confusion. That's fear. The word hit home. I took a step back, then another, until my shoulders brushed the wall. And what if I choose safety? I asked. What if I choose to keep my life the way it is? Ethan nodded, pain flashing across his face. Then I'll respect that. The answer surprised me, but he added softly, I can't go back to pretending either. There it was, the line drawn between us. The room felt impossibly quiet. Even the rain seemed to pause, waiting. I swallowed hard. So this is it? No, Ethan said. This is the moment we decide what it even is. He stepped closer, stopping just inches away. I could feel his presence, warm, familiar, terrifying. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure he could hear it. If I stay, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, everything changes. Yes. And if I don't? Everything still changes, he replied. Just without honesty. I searched his face for any sign of pressure, any demand. There was none. Only hope, fragile and brave. My hand lifted before I consciously decided to move it. I hesitated, just for a second, before letting my fingers brush his wrist. The contact was light. Innocent. It felt like crossing a point of no return. Ethan inhaled sharply but didn't move. Is this okay? He asked. I nodded, tears burning behind my eyes. That single touch carried the weight of everything we hadn't said, everything we'd been afraid to want. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud, but it was undeniable. A sudden sound shattered the moment. The front door. A key turning in the lock. Ethan's eyes widened. My blood ran cold. No, I whispered. The door opened and my brother's voice filled the house. I know you're in there. My brother's voice lingered in the air like a bruise, deepening by the second. I could hear his footsteps in the hallway, measured, confident, too familiar. Ethan and I didn't move. We stood inches apart, our bodies angled toward each other in a way that suddenly felt exposed, incriminating. I pulled my hand back as if burned. The space between us yawned open, cold and accusing. Ethan took a small step away, his jaw tightening. He glanced toward the doorway, then back at me, searching my face for instruction. Permission. Or maybe absolution. Do something, my mind screamed, but my body refused. My brother appeared in the doorway, rainwater darkening the shoulders of his coat. His eyes swept the room quickly, cataloging details the way he always did, where we stood, how close we were, the way neither of us met his gaze right away. Well, he said, his tone deceptively calm. I see I'm not interrupting anything important. I swallowed. What are you doing here? He smiled thinly. You weren't answering your phone. I was busy. His eyes flicked to Ethan. Clearly. The word hung heavy between us. Ethan straightened, squaring his shoulders. You don't get to talk to him like that. My brother laughed softly, a sound that made my stomach twist. Still playing the hero? This isn't your house, Ethan said. You can't just barge in. And yet, my brother replied, stepping further into the room, here I am. I watched them like a spectator to my own life, guilt and anger warring in my chest. I hated that Ethan was taking the heat for something that was mine. I hated that part of me was relieved he was. You need to leave, I said finally. My brother turned to me, surprise flashing across his face before it hardened into something else. You're choosing him? The question wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. I'm choosing myself, I said, though the words trembled. He studied me, searching for hesitation, for weakness. Whatever he found, or didn't, seemed to settle something in him. His shoulders relaxed just a fraction. Is that what this is? He asked quietly. You throwing your life away for a feeling? Ethan opened his mouth, but I shook my head, stopping him. This isn't a debate. My brother sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. For a moment, he looked tired. older than I remembered. Then the mask slid back into place. You don't know what you're inviting, he said. People don't forgive what they don't understand. I know, I replied. The silence stretched. The rain resumed its steady rhythm against the windows, like a clock counting down something inevitable. My brother's gaze softened, just for a second. I'm trying to protect you. By threatening us? Ethan shot back. That was leverage, my brother said, unapologetic. I needed him to listen. And now? I asked. He looked at me again, really looked at me. Now I need you to decide who you want to be when this gets out. When, not if. The certainty of it made my chest ache. He stepped back toward the door. I won't say anything, he added. Not yet. Ethan stiffened. Not yet. My brother paused with his hand on the handle. Secrets like this don't stay buried forever. You know that. Then he was gone. The door clicked shut with a finality that echoed through the house. I exhaled shakily, my knees threatening to give out. I sank onto the couch, staring at my hands as if they belonged to someone else. They were still trembling. Ethan stood across the room, frozen. I'm sorry, I said. I didn't mean for you to be dragged into this. He crossed the space slowly and sat beside me, leaving just enough distance to keep things careful. I walked into it. That doesn't make it fair. He glanced at me, his expression unreadable. Fair was never part of the equation. I nodded, swallowing hard. The weight of what had almost happened, what had happened, pressed down on me. The touch. The choice. The way everything had shifted without a single dramatic gesture. What happens now? I asked. Ethan didn't answer right away. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. Now we live with it. With what? With the truth, he said. And the waiting. The word sent a chill through me. He stood, pacing once, then stopping in front of me. I don't regret what I said to him, he added. Or what almost happened here. Almost. The ambiguity wrapped around us like fog. I just don't know, I admitted, my voice breaking, if I'm strong enough for what comes next. Ethan reached out, hesitated, then rested his hand on the back of the couch instead of on me. The restraint hurt more than any rejection. You don't have to be strong today, he said softly. Just honest. I looked up at him, my heart caught somewhere between fear and longing. Outside, the rain began to ease. Inside, nothing felt settled at all, and as the silence closed in again, one question echoed louder than the rest. When the truth finally comes out, who will still be standing beside me? The house never quite returned to normal after that night. Ethan stayed, but not in the way he used to. He moved through the rooms like a guest afraid of overstaying his welcome, quiet, careful, always leaving space between us. We spoke about small things, groceries, the weather clearing, a show neither of us was really watching. We didn't speak about the way my brother's words still echoed in my head. We didn't speak about the almost touch that had changed everything. Silence became our new routine. I caught Ethan watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. His expression was unreadable, caught somewhere between hope and self-protection. Every time our eyes met, something unspoken flared, and just as quickly dimmed. It felt like standing on the edge of something vast, afraid to look down. I hated myself for the relief that came with delayed. Days passed. Then weeks. My brother didn't call. That absence was louder than any confrontation. I checked my phone too often, half expecting a message that would shatter what fragile balance I'd built. Nothing came. Just the waiting. Just the knowledge that he hadn't forgotten, only postponed. Ethan noticed. Of course, you keep flinching, he said one evening as we sat on opposite ends of the couch, the TV casting flickering light across his face. Do I? I replied. He nodded. Like you're bracing for impact. I forced a smile. Maybe I always have been. He didn't smile back. I can leave, he said suddenly. The words hit harder than any threat. Is that what you want? No, he answered too quickly. Then, softer, but I don't want to be the thing you hide behind. Guilt flooded me. You're not. Then what am I? He asked. I didn't have an answer that night. After he went to the guest room, I lay awake listening to the house breathe. Every sound felt amplified, the tick of the clock, the wind against the windows, my own thoughts looping endlessly. I wondered if courage was something you woke up with one day, or if it had to be chosen over and over again. Despite the fear, morning came grey and quiet. Ethan was already gone. A note sat on the kitchen counter, folded neatly. I needed air. I'll be back later. Take your time. As if time was something we had. I stood there longer than I meant to, the paper trembling in my hand. Part of me wanted to chase after him, to say something definitive, anything that would anchor us. Another part clung to the safety of indecision, to the illusion that not choosing was still a choice. My phone buzzed. A message from my brother. We need to talk. Tonight. No emojis. No explanations, just certainty. I sank into a chair, my heart racing. Tonight felt too soon and long overdue all at once. I imagined the conversation unfolding 100 different ways, none of them clean, none of them painless. When Ethan returned, the sun was already setting. The air between us was thick, expectant. There's something I need to tell you, I said. He studied my face, searching for clues. Okay. My brother messaged me. Ethan exhaled slowly. And? He wants to talk. Tonight. The room seemed to hold its breath again. Ethan nodded, once. Do you want me here? I hesitated. That hesitation was everything. I don't know, I admitted. His eyes softened, even as something guarded slipped into place. Then I'll wait. For what? I asked for you, he said. To decide. As he walked away, the weight of that decision settled fully onto my shoulders. Outside, the sky darkened, the first stars flickering into view, distant, uncertain, but present. I stood alone in the living room, caught between past and future, safety and truth. And as night fell, one terrifying question refused to let me go. When I finally speak, will I be choosing love or losing it?